So hi everyone, my name is Amy Choi, and today I'm going to talk about my Project Green Challenge experience. So there are three main topics I'm going to cover: my main takeaways, how I'm going to carry myself moving forward, and then I'm going to present my climate action project. So if we continue on to the next slide, you can see a little photo collage that I made here. But basically, I want to preface my presentation by saying that the Project Green Challenge and even the Turning Green organization does an amazing job at creating a sense of this global community where you really create lifelong friends, and I've had amazing interactions with everyone here, and I can't wait to continue working with everyone. Now on to what I learned. If we go back to this slide. The Project Green Challenge covered really all aspects of climate change, right? So ranging all the way from engaging in political action to even your own lifestyle choices, what you decide to buy. And so I decided to reflect that through some of these photos. So eating flossin, learning how to upcycle, and a really unique aspect that the Project Green Challenge ended up talking about was mental health and making sure that you're taking care of yourself, you're prioritizing yourself, and you're bringing your best self to the table when you're pursuing advocacy. So on to the next slide. How am I going to carry myself moving forward? So in my personal life, this means being more reusable or using more reusable items instead of just like constantly single-use disposable items. This also means being more conscious of what I buy and making sure that the brands themselves are sustainable, they have ethical work conditions, and they try to have waste initiatives. And then lastly, sharing information with your friends and family, making sure that my friends are educated about climate change, my family's educated about climate change. And when this starts to connect with campus, like my campus life, we are going to introduce education initiatives, so having an Instagram that you guys should follow, by the way, and also just introducing climate change itself into the curriculum, right? So into bio or chemistry or even economics. And second, we're going to introduce bokashi. So for those of you who don't know, bokashi is a Japanese decomposing method, right? So they use bacteria and anaerobic processes in order to break down not only vegetables and fruits, but also meat and dairy. So that's something new. Lastly, we're going to introduce some water reduction initiatives, more efficient sprinklers, things like that, and then service events like the picture you guys saw on the previous slide. In my community, the action does not stop. So we're going to introduce a plastic bag fee. I'm currently, thanks to the Project Green Challenge, I was able to reach out to legislators. They were kind enough to respond, and they've been super helpful in helping me draft legislation based on the California bill, the one in Maine, different various states that have it. Hosting sustainability events, making sure that people in my community are aware, and then lastly, pursuing research opportunities. So some of you may know or may not know, I've worked with UNLV, and we just finished conducting dry lab research on different bioremediation techniques and evaluating the effectiveness of this. And in the future, I really hope to continue researching and pursuing my career in the STEM field. So on the next slide, that kind of segues into my CAP project. It is called the Sustainable Science Project. So oftentimes we look at the scientific community as a place of technology, as a place of innovation, and while it is that, we also have to evaluate whether the means in which they achieve these solutions are just as sustainable, right? So on to the next slide. Why do we need to focus on this? So 5.5 million tons of plastic waste is produced just in the life science industry. So this is not including like physics labs or chemistry labs. This is primarily talking about biology or things along that same branch. And if we decide to focus on hospitals with our project, then that could they produce up to 14,000 tons per year. The whole basis of this project really is we are going to partner with TerraCycle. They are a transparent recycling organization. They work with Acure, which is one of the partners. And what they do is they take materials, whether other, like even the most obscure materials like plastic pipette tips that other recycling companies wouldn't even think about recycling. And what they do is they not only decontaminate it and they sanitize it, but they also repurpose it. So they make sure that the plastic isn't or they don't go to landfills, they don't go to incineration facilities, things like that. And the reason why this is so important to focus on is because oftentimes in these landfills, or whether they're incinerated, plastic releases a lot of methane. And as some people previously touched upon in their project, if the plastic stays in these landfills, then they often release microplastics, whether that be in the soil or surrounding organisms. and oftentimes we can even find them in surrounding communities where people live. So it's really a human health concern, right? So on to the next slide. So what are the steps within this project, right? There are 3 main steps, the 3 R's, if you will, but they're not exactly the same as what you're typically known to, like, yeah. But the first step is raise. So this is actually reaching out to these laboratories or these hospitals and saying, hey, would you guys be interested in joining our initiative? And to facilitate this transition, we want to host a fundraiser. So we want to make, unfortunately, TerraCycle is not free, right? But we can mitigate the cost and host fundraisers in order to really tell them, hey, or to further incentivize the switch to more recycling. And the second would be reform. So not only do we want to make sure that people are properly recycling, but we want to make sure that the places in which they're sourcing their materials from are are sustainable, right? Or they have waste reduction initiatives, or they have ethical labor chains. We want to make sure that they're sourcing their materials from the right place. So this adds an educational element to our their RCAP project. And the last part is actually recycling, right? So it's conducting the waste audit, determining which packages we need to buy. And then lastly, ensuring that the people and the workers there know what to recycle and what not to. So if we move on to our last slide, this is the financial aspect of our project. It really depends on the waste audit, right? It wouldn't make sense if we partner with a research lab that primarily uses centrifuge tubes and then we install like a pipette recycling system. So the financial aspect of it is completely determined by our waste audit, which we'll conduct later on in the project. So I want to end with a quote by Jane Goodall. And she said, each one of us matters, has a role to play, and makes a difference. And this kind of speaks to that question that a lot of times, I'm sure a lot of the people in this room have been asked, why should I, as an individual, contribute to this climate movement? What role do I have? And there are so many answers to this question, right? But one that I really like to emphasize and one that I really want to focus on is it's the mindset. We need that mindset of change in order to bring about change in all these political institutions or business corporations and things like that. So thank you guys for listening.